serious health impacts of industrial waste.
Nick Singleton is continuing to find out what this means for communities as he now heads to North Yorkshire.
Earlier, I found out that tens of thousands of historic landfill sites in the UK could be endangering human health.
But the problem that we've got at the moment is we don't know which ones they are.
And I met the family campaigning for change following the death of their son and discovering they live next to a former landfill.
We have to make sure that this prevents future deaths.
Historical landfill sites are the only way that the environment can become contaminated and endanger our health. The redevelopment of former industrial sites, if mismanaged, can also release toxins, like the situation in Corby in the 80s and 90s, as depicted in the Netflix drama Toxic Town.
I've come to the town of Bentham in North Yorkshire. Last year, residents received a shock when an investigation by environmental magazine End's report revealed that their town had the highest concentration of PFAS chemicals in the UK.
PFAS are a group of chemicals widely used since the 1950s in products you will be familiar with, like waterproof clothing, non-stick pans, even food packaging. They're known as forever chemicals because they do not break down easily, either in the environment or in the human body. And they have been linked to health conditions, such as certain cancers.
Bentham is also home to Angus International Safety Group, known locally as Angus Fire, who manufacture fire protection products. PFAS are often used in firefighting foams, and it was in the groundwater of the Bentham factory that the high concentrations of PFAS were found. Like many residents of the town, Matt Young used to work at Angus Fire and is concerned.
How did you feel when you found out?
It was mind-blowing. I worry about what contamination I've had because I worked in the factory. I've given up around my own food up on one of the local allotments. I won't go in the river no matter how hot it is, just in case there's pollution there. I don't think there is a word that can actually portray how bad the situation is.
Do you think there have been noticeable health effects on the town?
Public health data does show that there is a higher cancer rate in Bentham, and it needs to be looked at more by the government.
All of this has led you to set up this campaign. Tell me about it.
We've a non-profit organisation set up called Cleaner Bentham. We've since instructed lawyers. We want the clean-up to be done properly, but we want legal changes as well.
If any legal cases go ahead, it will be one of the first PFAS-related cases in the UK. In the USA, thousands of these cases have resulted in billions of pounds paid out in settlements. Angus Fire says it stopped the manufacture of PFAS-related foam products at its site in March 2024. Professor Patrick Byrne from Liverpool John Moores University is an expert in environmental pollution, including the impact of PFAS in water environments. Patrick is aware of the high PFAS levels in Bentham and has been in touch with Matt Young and other residents about it. He's been contracted to test local waterways for PFAS by consultants working with Angus Fire.
Exposure to very high concentrations of PFAS has been linked to testicular cancer and breast cancer. With regards to the high concentrations found in the groundwater and in some of the soil samples at Bentham, we don't know if there's any harmful impacts on humans at this stage. There are some elevated concentrations in the groundwater, and there is further testing ongoing to see if that's spread into the surrounding environment. If further monitoring found elevated concentrations at a much wider amount of sites around the Bentham area, that might require some further investigations to establish if there's a pathway from the PFAS in the soil to humans.
When communities learn about contamination in their local area that may be causing them harm, the task of holding whoever is responsible to account can seem like an impossible one. But the Corby toxic waste case proves it can be done.
Depicted here in the Netflix drama by actor Rory Kinnear, Des Collins is the solicitor who took on Corby's case and won.
There's obviously potentially thousands of other sites in the UK, like the one in Corby.
We're certainly looking at the propensity to have a lot of this litigation as we move into the next 20 or 30 years.
Why do you think it is that more cases haven't been brought?
A number of reasons for that. The length of time they take to fight, which in my experience is upwards of 7, 8, 9, 10 years. The unavailability of legal aid. If someone comes to you and says, well, I think we've got a cluster of cancer, so you've got to then find out how many people live in the area, how many people have got that problem. That takes a lot of footwork to get the job done.
As I've learned today, contamination is a huge issue. Holding those responsible to account is complex and it won't be solved overnight. But one thing is certain, none of us should have to live in a toxic town.
Yeah, there'll be lots of questions about that, and we've had lots of replies about that film too. So Angus Fire said it recognises the situation in Bentham has caused concern, which is why it's commissioned thorough independent scientific assessments to understand the extent of the contamination and the corrective action required. It says it is keeping local residents and its regulator fully informed and is taking steps to make sure the contamination in the groundwater is contained. It also stressed this is not drinking water.
Now, Angus Fire also says that it has always followed the correct health and safety procedures on its premises for staff working with chemicals, and it has commissioned its own analysis of health data on cancer rates in Bentham, which concluded that there is no statistical difference between Bentham and the surrounding areas.
Also, Angus Fire pointed out that PFAS chemicals have been used in many consumer products since the 1950s, and everybody has been exposed to them through the use of everyday household items.
And we heard from North Yorkshire County Council. It told us its regular sampling of the private water supply to the Caravan Park and Golf Club has shown it is not contaminated with PFAS chemicals, with results showing the total level to be 0.
Bentham Town Council said it is working to strike a careful balance between the concerns of residents and supporting the town's economic development and growth.
And the Environment Agency said it will continue to work with partners to address the concerns raised by the local community. North Yorkshire County Council said it will share appropriate information as it comes to light.
In response to both of our films, the Local Government Association said it wants to work with the government to find a long-term solution for making contaminated land safe, which should include urgent funding for remedial work.
And just to clarify, that's North Yorkshire Council that we heard from in that. Thank you for the response. Of course, the information in our films today, we understand, might be quite scary for a lot of people. And as we heard earlier in the show, there are thousands of historic waste sites across the UK, and some could be affected by toxic chemicals. I suppose, Dr. Sand, I mean, what can people do if they are worried?
We know this is a topic that people are starting to really become aware of. There's even a headline today about a different type of forever chemical found in UK rivers. Well, first of all, if you have specific concerns about your health, do not hesitate to go and see your GP. Don't ignore any symptoms. It's also really important to point out that the science is still being worked out in relation to toxic waste and what happens to it in the environment. It can be very hard to prove that these things are definitely the cause of someone's health issues or that they have nothing to do with it. So as with everything, there can be lots of factors in play: your age, your diet, whether you smoke, that all has to be taken into account alongside the environment. So again, we really don't want to frighten you, but we do want to make you aware. If you're worried about toxins in the environment, talk to members of your community. Find out if you share similar concerns, gather evidence, talk to your GPs as they could be aware of wider issues in the area, and of course, get in touch with Morning Live too, because we're going to be monitoring developments in this area and we are keen to hear from you.
Exactly that, yeah, like Sam says there, we're going to keep talking about this issue, following the story. If you are or have been affected by the issue, here's the way that you can get in touch.
Yeah, you can just see it on your screen right now. The best ways to get in touch: you can email us at morninglive@bbc.co.uk, or you can send a WhatsApp. That's to 0800 032 1100. Just don't try to call that number, that's for sending messages only.
Well, one person who's been in touch with a completely different story is Morning Live